Welcome, everyone. We're going to get underway in earnest here in just a second as folks trickle in. All right. Well, good morning or good afternoon, wherever you are, depending on where you are. I want to welcome you to today's webinar. My name is Nate Hausman. I'm Inclusive Prosperity Capital's Solar for All Program Director. And this webinar is to share information about IPC Solar for All financing products launch. So hopefully you're in the right spot. We're excited that you're here, and we're excited to share more information about our Solar for All program and our initial financing products, which we launched actually 1 week ago today on Earth Day. Our team has been working hard to get here, and we've been looking forward to this for some time. But before we get underway, I just want to let you know a few things. One is this webinar is being recorded. We will share the recording and the slide deck from it in a follow-up email within a few days. We'll also post it to our Solar for All resources page. I also want to let you know that IPC's policy does not allow for AI note takers or bots, so they will be automatically excused. And finally, I want to let you know that you are in listen-only mode, but we are collecting questions, and we will set aside time at the end of this webinar to answer as many of those questions as we can get to. So please type your questions into the Q&A console, and we encourage you to type those in as they arise. Don't wait till the very end. That'll help increase your chances that they get answered. And in the event that they don't get answered, we will collate questions and answer those questions in a document that we'll share after the webinar. In fact, if you go to our Solar for All resources page, you can find answers to questions from an earlier webinar we did to introduce you to our Solar for All financing assistance program, and you can see those answers there. With that out of the way, let's dive in, and to help get you to the diving board with us, I want to introduce you to Carrie O'Neill, IPC's Chief Executive Officer, who has led the way in developing our Solar for All program. And Carrie will walk you through an overview of it. Carrie, to you.
Thank you, Nate, and great to see everyone today. Let's just dive right in, go to the next page. You'll see these slides, but a quick overview on it, disclaimer, we're not offering legal advice. There's quite a bit to this federal program, and we're going to be walking through at a high level the program guidance for our financial assistance program. It is a program that is evolving rapidly, and so we do expect updates as EPA provides additional guidance over time. So you'll want to continually look out for communications from us as that program does evolve. Let's go to the next slide. So today what we're going to do is I'm just going to give folks a reminder of what our Solar for All program is about. And then we're going to really focus on the eligibility and the financing products that we have just launched. And we'll also take you through our intake and application process, discuss our application and evaluation criteria, and then have some time for Q&A and follow-up. So let's go on to the next slide. And just as a reminder, we've had a couple of webinars. Go to the next slide. We've had a couple of webinars already discussing at a high level, but as a reminder, we are leading the Community Power Coalition, the Powering America Together program, which was awarded $249.3 million for a nearly national multi-state program that's focused on community solar and multifamily solar. And what we're really focused on is innovating and replicating across jurisdictions a handful of models that have really been hard to crack the nut on. That includes community ownership models that build wealth in local communities. Multifamily models generally have been challenging. Models that focus on rural regions and landowners and bringing additional wealth to rural regions using solar, including rural electric co-op ownership models, models that encourage storage and grid resiliency, and then models that also embed workforce development and small business ownership and entrepreneurialism. Last, on the ownership side of things, there's a model around resident-owned manufactured home parks that would own their own solar for the benefit of their owners in those manufactured home parks. So that's where we're focused. If you go to the next slide, we aim to deploy over 120 megawatts of solar over the course of this program, serving over 30,000 households. There's a big component of our program that's around technical assistance and capacity building that we'll be launching in the coming months. And we're not going to spend time on that today, but make sure you're signed up for our mailing list. And as those resources to come online, you'll get access to those. Our goal is to train over 500 developers across the country, and so that they're able to develop projects like we just spoke of. And then we're aiming to deploy $187 million in financial assistance from Solar for All, but also crowding in co-investment from community lenders. So well beyond the 187 million is our goal. Next slide. Just a reminder of our amazing coalition of partners, really the best of the best across our field. We have a number of lenders, not just IPC. So I do want to tag today, we're focused on IPC's products and what we're launching, but stay tuned. We have partners like Community Housing Capital and NeighborWorks Capital and Rock USA who are focused on multifamily and on that resident-owned community model. They'll be launching their products. We have People Solar Energy Fund and Grid who will be launching their own products as well. So this is just the beginning of the journey and just the beginning of financing and TA. Be on the lookout for that. And then you see our just amazing group of partners who will help us on the technical assistance programming side as well. Next slide. Let's keep going. In terms of IPC's products, we have a range of community solar and multifamily solar products that we'll ultimately be offering. And today we're focused on the interconnection bridge loan and the construction to perm and perm loan with an ITC bridge option. Those we launched last week for the intake process. And then over the course of the coming months, we'll be launching the complement of community solar offerings around our ITC transfer guarantee and PPA and lease options. And then on the multifamily side, full range of options as well. Those will come a little bit later. We do expect some of our multifamily partners to launch their multifamily loans probably ahead of us, if we had to guess. So that's our launch. And then in terms of the project eligibility criteria, this really hasn't changed since the NOFO going back, gosh, almost 2 years now. As a reminder, the projects need to serve low income and disadvantaged communities. The projects can have a nameplate capacity of up to 5 megawatts AC. So we're not talking about super large projects here. There needs to be a minimum of 20% net savings on the cost of electricity to low-income and disadvantaged community residential households. Davis-Bacon applies. Build America, Buy America applies, except that waiver that's out there through the end of this year. There are a number of other federal program requirements that apply. And for the community solar projects, a reminder that at least 50% of the electricity generated from the system and at least 50% of the benefits, meaning the financial savings and RECs and what have you, need to go to the benefit of multiple residential customers in the same utility territory. And we do recognize that in some states that have lots of utilities, that is a constraint. We're going to be referring a fair bit to our program guidance document, which was released. And the program guidance document is very detailed and has all the rules of the road for this program. And you'll be able to see a lot more detail around eligibility there. Next slide. As a reminder, when we say nearly national, what we mean is essentially there are 4 states that we do not cover: Arkansas, Kentucky, Mississippi, and Wyoming. We also don't cover tribal territories for financial assistance. We have provided a link to all the Solar for All awardees. And so if you are operating in one of those states or in tribal territories, there are definitely other programs that are going to be able to serve you. Next slide. In terms of the low income and disadvantaged communities definition, this too hasn't really changed. There are many different ways that you can screen in and say that you're serving LIDAC communities. One is through the CGES tool version 1.0. That has come down from federal websites, but there are copies available, and we do have a copy, and I think we linked to it in our program guidance. The EJ screen is another way that you can qualify in, or you can do the geographically dispersed low-income households definition, which is simply 80% AMI or 200% of federal poverty level as a way of screening in folks. Or they could be folks who are in an affordable housing property with the definitions that are aligned essentially to the HUD definitions. Which you see there. So I'm going to turn over now to really get into the meat of the financing products and our process to John D'Agostino, who's our Managing Director of Clean Energy Transactions. So over to you, John.
So, as Carrie mentioned, we've launched as of last Tuesday our first two financing products. So I'm going to go over both of those here at a very high level. So in large part, you can think of these as a short-term financing product and then a longer-term financing product. So the first of the two, interconnection bridge loan. This could be a single project loan. This could be a facility to support multiple loans for multiple projects. And really the purpose is to finance the cost of interconnection deposits for projects that have to get through, utility contingent interconnection approval process. And there are payments that are due as part of that process in order to get to the other side and get that contingent interconnection approval. So the purpose, as you see outlined here, supporting the cost of those payments. They could be for reimbursements as well, reserve accounts, and other associated transactional costs for community solar, and these could also include storage as well. So this financing product, we're going to offer up to 100% of the cost of those eligible interconnection deposits and related expenses. The loan facility will range from a minimum of $500,000 to a maximum size of $10 million. Interest rate, I think in the prior launch webinar that we'd done a few weeks back, we'd seen this up to 5%. So we've decided to go out to the market at up to 3.49% and a facility term of up to 36 months. Funds that are advanced for projects, if they are repaid, will be permitted to reborrow. So the purpose here really is to catalyze investment in markets where there's certainly a challenge getting deployment due to longer utility queues or just kind of like more expensive utility review processes by providing applicants with flexible financing to work their way through that interconnection approval process from a cash flow perspective. So you can go to the next slide. And the second product that we're going to be offering, so this is a third-party owned solar construction to permanent or just standalone permanent financing. And this will include an ITC transfer or elective pay bridge loan feature, if that feature is desired or necessary. And so this is going to support construction, operation management, and ITC monetization of third-party owned community solar projects for SFA projects. Again, community solar storage can be included. The loan facility here, $500,000 to up to $15 million. So it could be a single project loan or supporting multiple projects. As an advance rate construction financing, we'll advance up to 100% of related construction expenses until the conversion over to permanent financing. For the permanent financing package, we can do up to 70% of the turnkey permanent expenses, in addition to an ITC transfer elective pay of up to 70%. Clearly, the total can only be up to 100%. So, you can envision a scenario in which you have a 50% base credit and a 50% permanent loan need, or 60% and 40%, 70% and 30%. So we're just trying to provide flexibility to the market for folks who have gone out and they're developing low-income projects that have domestic content and then maybe in an energy community as well. So here, construction financing, you see 3.24, the permanent is up to 2.99, and term, we're offering a 24-month construction period, and then post-conversion for the permanent loan will be up to 25 years, and the ITC bridge will be up to 24 months. So you'll have 24 months from COD to repay that, which, depending on whether you're going through ITC transfer or elective pay, typically is monetized within about 12-month period. So flexibility on the front end and the back end. Go to the next slide. So we're going to talk very briefly about our intake and application process. And I do want folks just to have in their mind, bifurcating this, that we're calling the front end intake. This is generally going to be a lighter touch submission, so we have a general understanding of your project, and then subject to that intake being considered eligible for a full application, where we're really going to ask for the meat and potatoes of your project details. That's going to come in the application process. So go to the next slide, we can dive in on each. So at a high level, the intake process, we're going to rely on you as a project developer to submit the high level details regarding your project, the name, the location. Do you have clear title? Do you have contingent interconnection approval? These are largely going to be on an attestation form. All the previous solar for all requirements that Kerry mentioned, BABA compliance, prevailing wage, 50% of the electricity that's being generated off-taken by LMI communities with a 20% savings. All of those are just going to be checkbox on the intake form. That form will be submitted. It'll come into IPC staff. In general, this shouldn't be a particularly exhaustive review process. We should be able to get back to folks within about 5 business days. And so the goal will be to come back either with requests for additional information or clarification. If there's anything that, as part of that intake form submission was confusing or just needed clarification, or approval of eligibility to move to a full application, or if for whatever reason we are unable to proceed to a full application at this time, just apprising the applicant that we won't be moving to a full application. And the types of things that would result in that sort of a finding would be, again, if the project is not conforming to any of the basic program requirements, it's hard for us to kind of provide a basis for advancing that project. So that initial screen, again, we mentioned should be about 5 business days. And then once applicants are through that process, you'll receive an approval email and then a link to a full application, and that will kick off the full application process. I think at a high level, we've got it linked here. The IPC program guidance is really going to be the mainstay as a resource for project developers to kind of reference and see what is required, when is it required, how is it required, so that exactly what we're looking for at each given stage of this process. Go ahead for the next slide. So we've already covered this with intake form, basic identifying information. Who are you as a developer? What is the project? Where is the project located? What is its size? Which financing product are you applying for? Are you able to meet certain Solar for All federal program requirements? And then I think the one other piece on the right-hand side here, subject to being invited to submit a full application, that'll kick off a 90-day clock to complete that full application. We just want to make sure we have a little bit of a carrot for folks to kind of keep the process moving, so that all the project submissions are ripe in the front of our minds. And then after that 90-day period, if that expires, we'll have discretion as to whether to authorize an extension or kind of say, okay, well, you have to start over again with the application process. The goal here is just to keep folks moving through the process, so we're moving projects through the process as well. Go ahead to the next slide. So this is a quick screenshot of this is what the intake form looks like. It's going to be, again, very basic information. When we circulate these slides, we'll kind of have screenshots of, it's going to be kind of multiple pages on our web form of all the information that's being requested. We're trying to do as much of this in drop downs as possible, indicating what's required, basic contact information, basic project information. If you want to go one more slide, street address, employer identification number, and the like. And so really just trying to get as much of a handle on, are you as a developer, for lack of a better descriptor, real? Have you been in business, right? And like, have you done this before? Have you worked with LMI communities before? And just basic attestations of program conformance in order to make sure that we're kind of picking up the handle subject to your intake form submission. Good one. So, subject to that intake form being considered to be eligible and receiving an eligibility determination, applicants will be directed to complete a full application. And so this full application, as I referenced earlier, will really be all of the project details. So for instance, if you are applying for an interconnection bridge loan or bridge loan facility, you'll be asked to submit your project information, name, capacity, location, total projected project amount, projected financing need, advance rate, kind of all those details. And so we have a very strong sense of the financing need and the alignment. Yes, clear, do you evidence of site control, evidence of clear title and the like. Same thing on the construction to permanent or permanent financing. Pro formas, if for either a standalone project or for the multiple projects in the portfolio, if you have permits, contingent interconnection approval, EPC form agreements, subscriber management agreements, and the like. You will also, in that diligence and underwriting phase, delve a little bit deeper into the nature of the team, right? So it's not just you as a developer, but kind of as an asset owner, accounting folks, asset management folks, processes that are in place, O&M, all the likes that we're thinking when we think about lending to owners of solar PV systems. We want to make sure it's not just the development or not even the pre-development, the development and the construction management, but it's really being having a robust team in place for the long-term ownership of these assets and making sure that those teams can also comply with our reporting and compliance covenants that roll up broadly to the EPA for compliance under our work plan. So going through that diligence and underwriting process will depend a little bit on velocity, how many applications we receive, how complex the applications we do receive are, and then just staff bandwidth. We expect to work through diligence process, corresponding back and forth as needed with applicants for over a few week period. As anyone who's been in this business knows, this can take time to, some projects are easier than others in terms of understanding and kind of clarifying, especially for our work plan, working in innovative business models in kind of less cultivated community solar markets. This may take a little bit more time. The goal is to make sure we're keeping an open line of communication and advancing the ball and trying to get these projects underwritten fully and then getting to internal approval so that we can issue proposed term sheets to the applicants to move to that negotiation execution of a binding term sheet phase. And so the eyes on the prize is getting to a closed term sheet and then subsequent contract execution. As mentioned on the intake form slide, IPC program guidance will have all of the details here in terms of timing and processes and all the documentation that's necessary to get through this application phase. Go to the next slide. So I've already kind of covered a lot of this. The details that we're looking for is the applicant experience and qualifications, the project details, the structure, impact and outcomes we alluded to, and then conformance to the program and federal requirements. And so I think I covered all this. And then the only thing I'd say here, just similar to the intake phase, is if for whatever reason we're unable to proceed or the project is deferred, meaning that it's not deemed ineligible to proceed, but for whatever reason, IPC is just not in a position to proceed at that immediate time because perhaps, as Carrie mentioned, we have to find some other lenders in order to syndicate the loan as a whole. We'll make sure to correspond that and then change the appropriate status on the application, but this will all be detailed out in the program guidance. One more. Evaluation. Go ahead.
Back over to me, John?
Yep.
All right. Thank you, John. So I know we're going fast and there's a lot of details that we're throwing at you, but do again want to put a plug in to pull up the program guidance and review in detail. It's got all the rules of the road. And if you do have any questions, please feel free to email us and we'll continue to update FAQs as needed. So the one thing that we wanted to spend a moment on is the application evaluation criteria that IPC will be using to evaluate a full application as it comes in. So we have a fairly complex Solar for All program. We have multiple models we're trying to scale across multifamily and community solar across nearly the entire country. So that does mean that we need to think through how we put dollars out the door into these projects. And so, of course, in any underwriting process, how does the underwriting screen? Does it align with our underwriting criteria? That's going to be important. And as John spoke about, the project team and experience and the compliance capacity and readiness, those are important factors as well. But then there's the extra part that comes with Solar for All in our particular program. And that gets to the track record that your organization has in financing projects and working with and partnering with low-income communities. And then there's a whole category around what we're calling strategic alignment, project impact, and equitable and meaningful benefits scorecard. So there's quite a bit of detail in the program guidance about this, but I wanted to highlight some of the considerations that we'll be taking into account when we're evaluating projects. One of the considerations is geographic dispersion across the country. We're not going to have the ability, given our award size and how big the country is, to put all our eggs in one geography basket. So we're not going to be able to put all our dollars out the door in a handful of markets that maybe are more mature than others. We are very much focused on opening up opportunities for emerging markets. So that geographic lens and emerging markets is one lens that we'll be looking at. We also need to make sure we're balancing our resources across all 10 EPA regions because we do touch all 10 EPA regions. And then we get into the fun things around, we want to make sure that for all those things that we've highlighted around ownership models that support wealth building and community resilience, including storage and grid benefits, the extent to which you're leveraging additional resources and co-investment, and we'll help on this side as well. How deep are you going in terms of impacting low-income communities? Is everybody just doing 20% savings, or are you going deeper and getting down to 40, 50% savings? What are your education and outreach strategies, and what are your approaches to workforce development and community benefits plans and entrepreneurial support and things of that nature? There's more, but I just wanted to highlight a couple of the things. So in that 30% criteria, there are a number of factors that we will be weighing. And I also want to point out that we have a steering committee for the Community Power Coalition, and we and all the lenders and all the TA providers in our program will be kind of reporting up to our steering committee on these equitable, meaningful benefits and holding ourselves accountable to how we're doing and kind of spreading the wealth around the country and across these various benefits that we're looking to scale. So please do refer to the program guidance for more information. And then just one more, some of the fun stuff. It is a federal program that comes with a lot of federal and EPA requirements. And so this is not an exhaustive list, but it does give you a flavor of some of the items that we and you will need to be looking at. 2 CFR 200 and 2 CFR 1500. The Uniform Grants Guidance is in play. You have to have a unique identity identifier from sam.gov. You can't be debarred or suspended from getting federal contracting. Davis-Bacon, BABA, a lot of compliance reporting and certification around that. And then, many other aspects around historic preservation, floodplain management, consumer protection requirements, long-term asset management, O&M plans, and then there will be semi-annual and project level reporting. It seems like a lot, and we will be offering training and capacity building to help developers who are maybe newer to the space, get more familiar with this. So maybe you're not in the first wave of financing, but can in subsequent waves get trained up on all of these requirements. And again, program guidance has all the details. Next. And then we have a growing base of tools and resources and links for you that will be added to over time. So we do have our homepage for the Community Power Coalition, and we have IPC's Solar for All resources page for our own financing products. That includes our program guidance, the intake form. There's a PDF available of the intake form if you want to take a peek at what questions are going to be answered before you get into that form and start answering them. There are product summaries with the key terms of each of our 2 products that are currently being offered. We have more details on the methodology for calculating 20% household savings. And then we've also provided links to EPA's BABA and DBRA guidance. And I believe the BABA guidance also includes a link to the 2025 waiver that's in existence. And then, another plug, as we bring online more of our technical assistance and training resources, we'll be building out our resource hub and webinar offerings and training offerings, especially for those developers who are not yet as experienced, and that's totally fine. This is we have 4 more years left in this program. It's not all, not all the action is going to happen in year 1 or year 2. So don't feel like you're going to miss the boat if you're not ready to apply on day 1. And I believe, is that it? Are we ready to go to Q&A? And I know we do have a number of questions that have been coming in. So Nate, are you going to facilitate Q&A for us?
Yeah, sure am. Yeah, sure enough. We do have a bunch of questions. And I know you just mentioned this, but wanted to double click on BABA compliance and where folks can find more information about BABA compliance, the waiver process, and the like.
Yeah, so we have, that is one of the links that is on the previous slide, and it's on our resource page. I think it's a big, like down towards the bottom, there's a big box that says, click here for more BABA information. EPA has put out a number of resources around this that we're obviously going to be following. I also wanted to let you know that we will be scheduling a developer-focused BABA webinar and a Davis-Bacon webinar in the coming weeks. Where we'll provide more information about that. Along the same lines, we'll also be scheduling webinars that do deeper dives into the products if you really want to geek out on the individual products. So be on the lookout for those additional webinars. But in the meantime, the program guidance and then the links to the EPA information are available.
That's right. And we, as part of our technical assistance offerings too, we may have an opportunity to dive in.
We'll definitely be doing modules around that. I do want to mention there is a process by which you could essentially petition the federal government to receive an additional waiver, not the waiver that was done. I think that was done in December, that goes through 2025. It's not clear to us whether that will be a fruitful exercise to try to seek additional waivers for BABA compliance. We're not saying no, and we're not saying we're unwilling to go down that pathway, but given the stance we've seen so far from this administration, doesn't seem super likely and a super productive path to pursue. So in the meantime, one of the things that we as a cohort of 60 awardees across the Solar for All program are keenly trying to figure out is how to crowdsource or get access to a list of equipment that does comply with BABA, and where manufacturers are willing to put out the cert on that. So know that we haven't solved that yet, but that's something that the entire Solar for All cohort is working on and trying to figure out whether there's a partner out there or partners that could help us, identify equipment that does comply.
Great. Next question is about LIDAC eligibility and whether or not there's a single repository or tool that you can use to ascertain
Oh, do I
eligibility.
wish there was a single, yeah, no, there's not. There are 4 pathways. There's no one pathway that's, I think that was up in one of the early slides. There's not one pathway that's better than any other. EPA is essentially allowed for 4 different ways to determine LIDAC eligibility. You could use the CGES tool, you could use the EJ screen tool, you could use the multifamily designations that are kind of HUD plus, that go to the income levels of the tenants. Or you could just screen for 80% of area median income or lower, or 200% of federal poverty level or lower. And there are, well, is the LEAD tool at DOE still available? I mean, there are tools available out there to do that, but there's no single tool. I think EPA felt like offering 4 different pathways was the best to cover the entire country and the various models that might be in use.
Great. John, a question for you. When you were talking about the construction to perm product, someone asked, can this be used to take out existing construction loans? Wonder if you could weigh in there.
Yeah, it's in the title. It's a little bit fuzzy because we're trying to keep the number of products down by clarifying flexibility. So the construction to perm/perm can be a standalone perm loan, right? So if there's existing construction financing, so long as it is conforming to all the solar for all requirements, we'll accept intake forms for permanent funding on a standalone basis. It could be permanent with the ITC bridge feature or without, either one.
Great. And maybe this is a question for you, Gary can certainly weigh in too, but there's a question about explaining the difference in how these programs treat community solar facilities versus multifamily housing development with
Yeah.
behind the meter solar connected.
It's a good,
go
I
ahead.
saw that question. It's a great question. And there's definitely a little bit of squishiness along those lines. In the EPA definition of residential serving community solar, there are some specific requirements around at least 50% of the generation and the benefits are going to residents in the same utility territory. There are requirements around subscriber managers and consumer protection. And so I think the way I think about this, and on our team, there may be differing views as well. In a multifamily scenario, you probably don't have the same type of subscriber manager that you have in a traditional community solar project. And so if you have a multifamily behind the meter project, you probably want to focus on our multifamily product offerings, whether it's from IPC or NeighborWorks Capital or Community Housing Capital, or ROC has their own flavor for resident-owned communities, which will be coming online in the coming months. Having said that, you could take a look at the definition of residential community solar in our program guidance, and you may see a pathway there. So I don't want to say no, absolutely no, but it's most likely that you're going to be on the multifamily product side of things.
Great. Thanks for that. A couple of questions about leveraging other Solar for All funding to take advantage of products. Can a state and local government running a project do that? Can other projects do that?
Yeah. So look, if you have access to a state Solar for All program or another Solar for All program that's offering resources, and maybe they're grant resources, you should go there first and you should take advantage of those. What EPA does not want the Solar for All awardees to do is to essentially double dip on the same project. Or if you do, only one grant program gets to take the credit for the impacts and the outcomes. And just going to be really honest, in this launch year, as all our programs are looking to get up and get going, we all need to show impact and we all need to show outcomes. So probably not an easy thing for any program to say, oh yeah, you know, go to that state program and get a grant and then come to IPC's program and get a loan, and IPC won't take the credit for the outcome. In year 3, 4, 5, that may be a thing, but I think in these initial program years, it's a little difficult, especially as we're all launching. Because again, only one program can count the credit for the impacts. Unlike some of the GGRF other programs that folks may be aware of, where there's an attribution or a pro rata attribution scheme, that's not the case in Solar for All. Certainly on technical assistance, come to us for as much technical assistance as you want. The one thing I will say though is we're very keen in terms of trying to find community lenders who want to lend along these projects. And so that may be something that you want to talk to us about. Let's say you're going to use a state incentive, a different Solar for All state program for the incentive for the project, and you still need a community-based lender. That's under our TA program, and we can do that. So we would be happy to talk to you about that. Probably wouldn't come through our intake form. You'd probably want to reach out to us independently.
Very good. Question about our application evaluation criteria, and specifically about compliance capacity and readiness. How do you show compliance capacity and readiness with respect to DBRA, BABA, and the like?
I'll just offer, Carrie, this is John. At a high level, some of this for the Build America, Buy American, it's going to be informed by, you telling us what equipment you're planning to install, right? And like, we might ask as part of the diligence process there, like, okay, and this is, some of this is just market knowledge, right? Like, we generally know a lot of the manufacturers that they're domestic content, but not all. And so that'll be a conversation. It'll be a learning for us. We'll check with folks internally and confirm. So that's on the front end. Prevailing wage. This is a little bit, it's like economics, probably 201, not 101, of just trying to understand install costs and like how are those costs flowing from the physical installers. So we don't, there's not a hard and fast kind of rule. I think that's going to be the subject of future webinars, and we'll try and put some form around that. But I think the base level is, we're asking you, right? Like, you tell us that this is all correct, and then we're going to try to put guidance around it.
It is a good point. Bob is a little bit more binary. There's documentation that has to be provided, and then we confirm that. There's more involved on the Davis-Bacon side, so stay tuned on that front.
Yeah, and I'll just add to that, we do plan, training, showing training and experience with DBRA is would be part of that. Next question is about different geographies and different states' policy environment, regulatory environments, and whether that will be taken into account as part of our screening and review process.
Yeah, in almost like counterintuitively, in a more positive way. Like we very much are focused on emerging markets, the harder markets. So if you're coming forward with a project that isn't in a harder market, we're going to take a harder look at that. That's where we're really trying to focus. Solar for All is not needed in super mature markets that have rich incentives and well-trod pathways for getting financing and getting projects done. I'm not saying there aren't super impactful projects in those markets that we might not look at because there's something innovative, like, let's say, in the ownership model. But in particular, if you're in a market that is emerging, we're going to want to look hard at that and give that extra credit, if you will. It's also a place where we're going to be very focused in our technical assistance program on the education and policy and outreach front over the course of the several years in terms of educating policymakers, and we'll want to partner with you and those of you on the ground on that as well. Those criteria go into that 30% of the strategic alignment and equitable and meaningful benefits bucket. And that would be, a place where we'd see probably, more weight, more points given because it is an emerging market.
Very good. What I think is a softball. When is our intake form open? When will applications be
So
open?
the intake form is open, and we've given ourselves, about 5 business days to get answers back. And so we did get some in, I think within the first 24 hours. So we'll be starting to invite folks to apply probably as early as tomorrow morning, if they screen through that intake eligibility. And remember that intake eligibility is really meant to, we don't want you to waste time. If you're not going to be eligible, we don't want to waste our time either. So we'll start to invite folks to apply for the full application, probably as soon as tomorrow, if I had to guess. And then it is an invitation to apply. So the application, you'll get a link to apply. The program guidance does describe the application process.
Carrie, where do single family home offerings fit into this?
Yeah.
If
Our-
multiple single family homes in an area,
Yeah,
is
we
that
are
viable?
not, so we are not a single family home program. We are only community solar and we are only multifamily solar. So to the extent that you have single family homes that may be subscribers into a community solar project, then that could work under our program. But if it truly is solar on single family homes, that is not our program. We have provided links to the other programs, and there are many other programs in the Solar for All cohort that are serving single family, just not us.
Very good. John, I think a question for you. Will borrowers be required to provide a guarantor to access construction to loan financing? Construction to perm financing, excuse me.
This will be subject to underwriting. The kind of the spirit of the Solar for All program, right, is to catalyze markets. And so fundamentally, as a blanket statement, no, they won't be required to do that. It may be that we would look for, guarantees from developers of a certain type or a certain project type in a certain market. But the goal is to catalyze markets fundamentally. And so that as a provision or a term in any sort of term sheet and then subsequent documentation, the goal is to make sure that we're doing our diligence, we're doing our homework, we understand the project very thoroughly so that the economics are penciling and, we are getting deployment in less mature markets and in different project structures and models. So as a blanket statement, no, but it's all going to be subject to diligence.
Very good. Is the financing for solar and solar related equipment only, or is there a possibility of financing for multifamily job facility asset lending, for example, or other things like that?
There are pretty severe constraints from EPA on what we're allowed to finance. So we can finance solar, storage, and in our program, we can finance some enabling upgrades. That would include roof for a solar that's sited on a multifamily building, or it could be a community solar installation sited on some sort of facility. And we can also finance transmission and distribution upgrades if that T&D upgrade is cited in a LIDAC tract. So it's got to be in a low income census tract. And you had to have, kind of run down all your other options for getting those upgrades done. So it's not going to do your energy efficiency plus, or I think I see another project around cogen and microgrids, and it's solar storage and enabling upgrades. It's very focused. We all love building decarb. We all love lots of different solutions. In this program, we are limited. That's not to say you couldn't bring us a project that's got other financing sources that will be handling those parts of the project. Though I do want to flag, if Solar for All dollars are going into the project, Davis-Bacon is in play for the whole project.
Lots of great questions.
Lots of fun stuff.
Yeah, lots of fun stuff too. Lots of fun stuff. Lots of good questions coming in. A question about, just want to circle back on the timelines for the intake form for applications. Is this just all rolling, or are there hard deadlines associated with this?
It is rolling. It is rolling, and this, these are our initial 2 products that we're launching. We have other products that we'll be launching throughout the rest of the year. And our other lenders and our coalition will also be opening up, application and intake processes. We will be communicating out as we start to invite folks to apply, and we start to close loans, kind of where we're at in terms of the overall $187 million that we have available for financial assistance across all lenders and across the entire 5-year program. So that's maybe let me say more explicitly, we're not going to spend all the money at IPC in the next 5 months, right? So we are a program that will be in the market for several years across all our lenders and products.
Great. Speaking of timelines, does our program, can we help expedite the permitting and interconnection process, knowing that there's long queues for that?
Yeah, so we have, as part of our technical assistance program, CCSA is one of our partners who will be putting out resources to help identify, best practices and interconnection and permitting. This is certainly a topic amongst the entire Solar for All cohort. So we would expect to be able to leverage resources that we're seeing broadly, across the program in other states and other multi-state programs, kind of what they're seeing. We are aware that's an issue, and that is, of course, one of the goals of this program is to make progress on interconnection queues. Not like we have all the answers on that, but we will certainly look to put resources out on that. I don't know, Nate, if there's anything else you want to mention on the technical assistance side. I mean, I think it's like stay tuned for more resources on our side.
That's right. Yep. Stand by. More to come. A question about, well, actually, it's a 2-part question. The certainty of the funding source, as well as whether we have to comply with federal procurement requirements as we do this.
So the Solar for All program has been open, and programs have been drawing funds down for about 2 or 2.5 months now. We've not seen any interruptions in that beyond what we saw in the very early days of the administration. And so that has been really a fantastic development. Our EPA Solar for All program staff is really engaged. They're getting support across the agency from the grants office and the quality assurance office and the office of the general counsel and leadership. And so it's all systems go, and you're seeing many programs across the country starting to launch. So that's really fantastic. And in terms of IPC having to comport with federal procurement, yes, what we have described to you today does comport with the federal procurement requirements that come with this Solar for All funding. So it's a little bit different than how IPC would typically operate in the market as we do our lending. So we've modified our processes to conform with that procurement process. It's why you see an evaluation criteria that we put out and what have you. Did I hit all the questions there, Nate?
I think you did. Next question is, how are we verifying subscriber savings? Household savings.
Yeah, so we have in our program guidance a framework. What we chose to do with EPA is get approved a framework or a methodology for verifying savings, in part because We're working all across the country, lots of different markets, lots of different utility territories, and both community solar and multifamily solar. So we adopted a framework or a methodology. So you will need to provide the information to us that allows us to, verify the savings per that, very high level methodology. I think in our intro webinar, we had a slide that spoke to that, but it's also one of the links that we provide to the 20% savings, and it's in the program guidance. And if folks have questions about it, please do ask us. That is something that I imagine we will get questions on, and we'll look to beef up our FAQ over time or include in subsequent webinars if we need to do deeper dives.
Very good. Question about whether a solar canopy could be eligible as both on the multifamily side and the community solar side, depending on, what's serving and how. Yeah,
I don't see why not.
I agree. And then another question that I think you answered, but I just want to ask it explicitly. Is the funding for this spread out equally across the years for this? Or, if you can't apply this year, is there an opportunity in future years?
So what we did is we did a little bit of a bell curve. We had a little bit lower, allocation of funding in year one as we got going, with the bulk being in the middle years and a little bit of a tail down in the last year. If you're not ready this year, that's fine. I would say, year 2 and 3. Let's be clear on our years. We're actually about to start program year 2 on May 1st. And then we'll also have 4 years left. And so I would say this first year we're getting going, year 2 and 3. So that would be 26, 27. We're really rocking. And then we tail down, end of 28 into 29 through April of 2029. So don't worry, you're not going to miss the boat if you don't get in now. And then again, a big piece of what we're trying to do is to crowd in community lenders to co-lend on these projects, to be able to expand the lending capacity for these projects all across the country.
Great. This also goes to timeline. How far along do these projects have to be to enter this process? Do they have to be, in place, commissioned by a certain year, or is in process in the interconnection
I'll let John
good enough?
answer that.
Yeah, so it's less a matter of how far along they are in terms of like focusing on when they COD, et cetera. What we really want to be thoughtful about is making sure that the project is appropriate for the financing assistance that's being requested, right? So as a minimum gating criteria, we want to make sure that if you're coming in for project financing, that you have site control, right? And because having site control means that you can go get these various things. If you do not have permits, that's fine. Better if you do. It just kind of helps understand, because permits can take time. Contingent interconnection approval can take time. So site control is a minimum. It's very helpful as part of the intake to be able to say that you have evidence of clear title for that property as well. So there's not a hard and fast rule in terms of like how far along. I think what we want to make sure is, if you're applying for permanent financing, that, when we get through to the application phase, you can submit all the things that we are going to request to show that, yes, this project is nearing construction or is fully constructed, right? You have a structural, you have an EPC agreement, you can show lien waivers throughout the construction process, the types of things that any lender would want to request. But there's not necessarily a specific criteria on the tail end in terms of the this going into year 2, that your project has to COD within the next 12 months, 24 months. As Carrie mentioned earlier, really, this is going to be an evolving matrix of making sure that we've done some financing for interconnection bridge loans in certain markets. And then as time goes by and the shorter term lending starts to convert to longer term lending, right, that we're committing funds in a manner that gets that money out the door before the work plan wraps up.
Very good. Well, we are close to time here. I am going to ask a final question, and then I'm going to actually answer a question, and then we'll close out here. Well, really, it's a couple questions that have come in, but one more question for you, Carrie. In terms of evaluation criteria, what about rural projects? How does that get considered?
Yeah, rural projects are a particular focus area of the program, just like emerging markets. And so it's another place where we would look extra hard and give some extra credit to in our evaluation criteria. It's a place where we're also going to look to bring on some additional consultants to really help us make sure we're serving those communities that, you know, the unique needs of rural communities and rural landowners. And so that'll take us a little time to get on board, but that's definitely something in the coming years, and we want to have some extra focus on.
Great. Well, we are at time. I want to quickly answer a couple questions that came in about sharing links and slides. We will email a link to a recording of this webinar along with slides in the days to follow. Within a few days, we will also post this up to our IPC Solar for All resources page, so you can find it there as well, as long with other links to resources mentioned, like our program guidance, household savings tools, information about our products, and the like. So that's where you can find more information. We are grateful to you for spending the last hour walking through this with us and for your interest in this. I also want to especially thank Carrie and John for your presentations, and the whole team for really pulling this together. So it is a team effort. Thanks again. Have a great rest of your day.
Thanks, everybody.